Restricted Pokemon are the legendaries you'd see on the boxes of games like Ho-Oh or Zekrom. These legendaries tend to be really powerful, but they are limited to the last format of the VGC season and you can only use 2 per team. However, not all legendaries are created equal. Some just have low stats, some don't do well while competing with other restricted legendaries, and some have just been nerfed to the ground. The legendaries that don't need a buff are the ones on screen. With that said, make sure to take this with a grain of salt if you are a singles player. I know you guys will despise Necrozma, Duskmane, and Reshiram after these buffs, but who cares? I don't. Scratch that. If you are a VGC player, take it with a grain of salt as well, because I thought of 90% of these in the shower. Make sure to like and subscribe to both me and the person voicing this video at age64. Without further ado, let's get into the safe for work buff legendaries. Despite being the OG legendary, Mewtwo hasn't really been that good in VGC. It's only ever been used back in 2010, which is a shame considering its well-rounded stats. I feel like a cool and 100% improbable thing that Game Freak can do is buff it by adding back the Berserk gene. The Berserk gene is an item introduced back in Gold and Silver found near Cerulean Cave that, when consumed, boosts the user's attack by 2, but confuses them. This doesn't sound like a really good idea in the context of Mewtwo, considering it boosts attack only. It also affects Pokemon that aren't Mewtwo. These are things that I would change. I would make Berserk Gene buff both attack and special attack and make it only work on Mewtwo. This doesn't seem to be too great considering it would necessitate support from Pokemon like Tapu Lele or Lunar Blessing Cresselia, but it still seems like a fun little niche pick that can be a win condition if you position it right. Lugia has been one of, if not the worst restricted mon since VGC's inception, and one of the reasons why is its lack of power. The best thing it can do is be a wall that can set up either screens or tailwind, which means it's not being a massive offensive threat like other restricteds, basically being a waste of a restricted Pokemon slot. My way of making it a much bigger offensive presence is by buffing its signature move Aeroblast. I'm thinking of making it a 50% crit rate, multi-target, and 100% accurate move that would allow it to get big damage on threats such as Amoonguss, Ogerpon, Urshifu, or anything weak to spread damage or flying. Plus, this would allow it to beat offensive screen teams by critting a lot. Dialga has been a pretty good niche restricted Pokemon for the last couple of formats, being a bulky Trick Room setter / attacker with telepathy, a great defensive typing, and good burst damage. However, I fear it will drop in usage this gen due to the loss of Dynamax, the addition of one of its best checks, Koraidon, and just being outclassed by other Trick Room setters in general. I'm not sure how much better this will make Dialga, but I chose to buff Roar of Time to 180 base power if it's used by Dialga Altered. This allows Dialga Altered to do a great amount of damage on anything that isn't a resist, and even then, it can still chunk resists like Heatran. I had to specify which Dialga form because I don't want to make Origin too powerful, especially after this next buff. To be honest, I don't know how good Dialga Origin will be, but I suspect that it will be outclassed due to the lack of having a good item slot. Dialga Origin needs something that can make it stand out amongst other Trick Room users, so this is why I decided to remove 20 points from its speed and put it into special attack. This will allow it to be slower than other restricted Trick Room setters, whilst being more powerful than them, having a whopping 170 base special attack while holding the Adamant Crystal, which boosts its stabs. This would hopefully make it so Dialga Origin stands out from other restricted Trick Room setters whilst not outclassing them. I have a real simple change in mind for Palkia Origin. The best idea to buff Palkia Origin while still having it be balanced is by reworking its stats. If you remove 20 attack and put it into speed, it can suddenly outspeed threats that threaten to OHKO it, such as Koraidon, Miraidon, Sash Bundle, Qianpao, Fluttermane, Adamant Scarflando, and Modest Specs Kyogre. This would hopefully solidify it as a good choice if you want a fast dragon, while still not being better than them due to their access to field condition abilities. Remember when I said that Lugia is the worst restricted in history? Well, that was wrong, because both Giratina forms have been unviable throughout their entire lifespan, only seeing occasional usage in 2016. For some reason, I have a good idea for a buff, but I'm not sure how broken this would be. but I think giving Shadow Force +1 priority on both hits would be pretty good. This allows it to basically have Protect that does priority 120 base power stab damage next turn. I made both hits +1 priority so Giratina doesn't spam 0 IV, 0 Iron Ball to cheese its way to victory. This also allows Giratina to be checked by both Armor Tail Farigiraf and other restricteds that we'll get to later. Oh yeah, I give it Tailwind too. Also, I can't tell if this is better or not, but a friend of mine, PokeKnight, suggested that Shadow Force should have different effects depending on the form. 50 base power spread move that lowers attack and special attack for Altered, and 90 base power that always crits move for Origin. If this is the preferred set of buffs, make Giratina Altered stats 170, 90, 130, 90, 30, 70, and Origin stats 130, 130, 90, 130, 90, 110. Also give this version Tailwind like the previous one. Why did it not have Tailwind to begin with? Fun fact about the Tau Trio: when their tails charge with fire or lightning respectively, they are considered their own forms, the Overdrive forms. By the way, these are real, they're just forgotten, even by the world's #1 Zekrom enjoyer. I wanted some way of incorporating these into competitive while not creating a new form entirely, so my idea is to change Turbo Blaze to act like Gale Wings, giving fire moves +1 priority while at full HP on top of its previous effect. This would hopefully grant Reshiram the niche of either being a behemoth with choice specs, or being a good Sun/Burn setter with Will-O-Wisp and Sunny Day. Also, why not give it Burning Jealousy? It should have had this move before. It's the perfect fit for Reshiram.
It has buffed Turbo Blaze too. That's about it.
We are just going to give Terravolt a similar buff to what we gave Turbo Blaze. Instead of giving fire moves +1 priority, it would give electric moves +1 priority on top of its regular effect. Let's also give it Swords Dance, a good boosting option if you are willing to keep it at full health for a turn.
This section is getting boring. You know exactly what I'm going to do.
Okay, forget about what I said about Giratina. Regular Kyurem has legit seen 0% usage for the entirety of its VGC career. Let me run down a list of Pokemon who have seen more usage than Kyurem in VGC 2016 alone. Togepi, Ferocity, Meowth, Metapod, Riolu, Fungus, Skitty, Ducklet, Spupa, Sliggoo, Swirlix, Litleo, Magikarp, Snubble, Frillish, Tropius, Spiel, Eevee. I can go on for hours about how many bad Pokemon have seen more usage than Kyurem. My idea for buffing Kyurem is simple. Add 20 to speed, and make Glaciate 110 base power. This allows it to have an extremely powerful attack that drops speed. This will hopefully bring it up to 0.01% usage. Okay, time for the rapid fire.
Make sure it has 150 base attack. May I order a side shield bash with a side of high horsepower, please? Make an armor 2 quarters instead of 3 quarters reduction.
Zacian Crowned is by far one of the best restricted legendaries of all time, being both absurdly powerful and fast. So what buffs would I give her? The answer would be none, but I am crazy, so I got a good idea. Add 20 to her special attack? Oh, why may you ask? That's because of... Okay, so let's add 10 into attack and 5 into both defenses for Zamazenta, just to make the balancing between the heroes of Galar look fair. Because Regieleki got a Transistor nerf, while Regidrago didn't get a Dragon's Maw nerf, it baffles me as to why they decided to nerf Dauntless Shield, so let's fix that and revert Dauntless Shield back to its original state. Let's also give him King's Shield, Spiky Shield, Meteor Mash, Superpower, and Recover for good measure. Due to the lack of Dynamax, Dynamax Cannon is just a lame 100 base power Dragon move. To replicate the effects of its damage boost from Gen 8, we can give Dynamax Cannon the side effect of dealing double damage to all Pokemon above 300 pounds. This allows it to OHKO every restricted Pokemon that isn't a Fairymon or Calyrex Shadow in the format. Okay, the Pokemon tied with Kyurem for having the least usage is Calyrex. I genuinely had no idea on how to buff this thing without making Calyrex Shadow any more broken. Some may say that, whew, There is nothing we can do! Shut up, Mickey! But with the help of my friends, I was able to brainstorm many buffs for base Calyrex. First off, let's give it an ability called Royal Aura, which prevents opposing priority moves, sets up grassy terrain upon switch-in, and lowers the opponent's speed by 1 each time it's hit by a contact move. This might sound like a bit much, but let's be honest, it makes up for Calyrex's pitiful stats. Speaking of its pitiful stats, let's change that by giving it 30 in both attacking stats and 20 in defense and special defense. Now it finally has the stats of a mid-level pseudo-legendary. Fun. Finally, let's give it a signature move called King's Harvest, which is a 90 base power spread damage special attack that summons Leech Seed on both opponents. Hopefully base Calyrex can have a niche, but I still kinda doubt it. These were some buffs I'd give to the weaker restricted Pokemon. What buffs would you give to the restricted Pokemon? What content should we make next? How broken is Reshiram actually? How many of these were bad ideas? Tell me in the comments below. Special thanks to Aid64 for voice acting, to Plasma Energized, PokeKnight, Kjort, Andre Apple, and AJ for giving me suggestions, to Seaotter VGC for giving me Kyorem's VGC 2022 usage, and to Creeper Clash and Zonagalt for suggesting thumbnails.